Um, just a little bit of background. At BYU, we're currently modeling our buildings on campus. We have about 50 buildings modeled and are trying to speed that process up to get even more. Our contract documentation allows us to require now um, that all of our deliverables come to us in Revit format. And so we're getting these really nice models with a lot of information in them. At BYU, we aren't using any third-party applications at this point to manage some of the data in those models, which of course they're coming very data rich to us. So uh, we kind of use some little processes, which I'm going to share a few of those today, on extracting some of that data for space management purposes, asset management, primarily using um, shared and project parameters, and then showing you how to customize schedules so that they give you the information that you need. Uh, in the space management arena, when I first saw Revit 10 or 12 years ago, at the time, using AutoCAD like most campuses do, I'm sure we're all familiar with the term polylining, and I can't see you, but I'm sure your heads are nodding. So at the time, as we managed our space, I managed two different AutoCAD drawings, one with the actual floor plan changes and a second drawing with the polylines that define the boundaries and the areas of those rooms. And then we extracted that data via um, some macros and utilized that area in our square footage reports. The only problem with that was that, of course, we had two drawings that had to be modified every time there was an update or a change. And if I modified the floor plan before lunch, went to lunch and forgot to modify the area plan, the square footage plan after lunch, then there was a definite disconnect. And when I first saw Revit and saw its parametric change engine, how powerful that was, to me that was a light bulb going on, that at the very minimum I could utilize that parametric change engine to at least keep me coordinated and up to date on my square footages. Let me switch over to Revit real quick. For our presentation today, we're going to be using just a single floor of one of our buildings here on campus. Some of the schedules I've created ahead of time that we'll use, most of them are empty, and we'll populate those with data. Again, we'll be working with project and shared parameters. If you're not familiar with the difference between those two, let me just quickly explain that project parameters, as you create those, are available only in the project that you're working in. Shared parameters, on the other hand, are created in an external file. You can assign those to project parameters inside your project, but the original the shared parameters are stored in an external file, which is kind of handy if you have multiple users sharing different parameters. You can put that file up on the network, and everyone can have access to the parameter definitions and use those in any project they want to. Most of our data today will be just using project parameters, but you could create those as shared parameters with the identical results. All right, I'm going to turn off some floors in here just to keep our project not as busy as it looks right now. And really, this is a pretty basic floor plan. We've got some rooms, classrooms, office space. We have furniture in some of those rooms, particularly the classrooms. Every room has a room object assigned to it. So you notice if I move my cursor over room, there is a room object, which is the object that defines the area and the volume of that room. In reality, that room object is extremely powerful. Most of our parameters that we work with today are going to be assigned to that room object, because as the room changes configuration, then that room object will update automatically, and our square footages that we apply to formulas and other things will be updated automatically for us. What I'd like to do first in the area of space management today is we're going to create a parameter called assignable. In other words, I want to track, just very simply, I want to track assignable and non-assignable space on this floor plan, on this level, and use it for other means. So I'm going to go up to my Manage tab first off, and I'm going to select Project Parameters. Notice there is a Shared Parameters option also, and you're going to see in the parameter definition box the difference is very apparent between those two types. So let me click on Project Parameters. I do have currently two project parameters created, College and Department, and they're already assigned two room objects and are actually available in a room schedule that we started, a basic room schedule. So I'm going to click on the Add button. There's the listing on the parameter types. Project parameters can appear in schedules but not in tags. Shared parameters can be in multiple projects and families, exported to an object database connectivity file, and appear and in schedules and tags. So it's a little more robust type of a tool. This first parameter we're going to create is just very simply called assignable. The discipline, you see we have options in here. Almost all of our parameters are just going to be a common parameter that could be used in any discipline for our project. The type of parameter is critical. So you can see we've got a list here: text, integers, numbers, areas, volumes, etc. The parameter type that we're going to use is called a yes/no parameter. Now, a yes/no parameter in Revit is just it's a parameter that behaves as a switch. It has in its definition, if it's checked on, it's yes. If it's checked off, it's no. So it's kind of a toggle switch that you can use to assign to an object. We'll just leave it grouped under other. Very critical that we make sure that this is an instance parameter rather than a type parameter. Instance parameters are assigned to the same room objects, but you can change the value of the single room in an instance parameter without affecting other rooms, which is of course what we want. If we had this set to type parameter, then if we change that to yes, it's assignable, it would actually update every room in the project to be assignable also, which is obviously not going to work for us. Over on the right side, we've got a list of categories that we can now assign that parameter to. We'll go down to rooms and click the toggle on and click OK. And now that parameter has been assigned to rooms. And we can quickly verify that by selecting one of the room objects. Whoops, let me come over here and exit out of that. If we select a room object and go over to the properties for that room, notice that under other, which was the category that we selected, assignable is now existing. And we'll discuss why that's grayed out in just a second. Well, the first thing I want to do before I move over to my schedule is I'm going to select all the rooms on this level. I'm going to use my handy filter tool to check none first off, and then go down and just check rooms. That way I don't have to try and select each individual room. I've filtered everything out except for rooms. I'll click OK, and now only room objects are selected. And you can see I have the data for rooms only in the properties box. Now let me return to this assignable toggle. Notice that I've got that assignable. Yes, no means I've got a checkbox available. I can either check it on or off. Now, initially these are gray because Revit doesn't have any idea if these are going to be assignable or non-assignable to start with. So it leaves it gray as kind of a maybe. So it's not yes or no, it's just maybe. So we're going to first off toggle that on so it's bold. And now all of these rooms will appear as assignable until we change those otherwise. All right, going back to my project browser, I'm going to select the level 3 rooms schedule that I had previously started. Very basic. Right now it only lists the room numbers, the level they're on, the college and the department, which were those two parameters that I pointed out earlier that we had already created, and then the basic areas. And we're going to flesh this out quite a bit with some additional data. So going into this schedule, I'll click on the properties and click on the edit button to get into the fields here. You'll notice on the left side under available fields, I now have that assignable parameter ready to be brought over to the other side so that it's part of this schedule. So I'll just highlight assignable, click on the add button, and that will be placed on the other side. And as soon as I click OK, there it goes. It's in place again. Based on that toggle that we switched on in the floor plan, everything is currently assignable, which of course we have some spaces that are not assignable. For example, down at the bottom here, BYU uses a college designation of ZZZ for non-assignable space. Now I could go in here and toggle each one of these checkboxes individually, but basically I'm lazy. Good Revit users, a lazy Revit user in my opinion, so let's use the tools to make that a little simpler. So what I'm going to do is go into the sorting and grouping options for this schedule. The reason we're seeing every single room is because I've got this itemize every instance toggled on. I've got some sorting going on by college and by department, so that's why these are grouped the way they are. So I'm going to turn off this itemize every instance option on, toggle it off. And now notice it's got all the college information grouped into a single line. So I'm just going to come in here and toggle this off, this off, this off, this off. And then we have a huge empty space in the middle of the building, which is this open space, no room numbers assigned to it. So I'm going to toggle it off also. So now everything in those college categories are now non-assigned. I go back into the sorting and grouping, click on itemize every instance, and one more time you can see everything listed there, but all the check boxes are off for those appropriate categories. Alrighty, well, while we're in this schedule, we're going to add some additional fields that are going to return to us data that would be very useful for us. So I'm going to go back into the Fields tab. What we're going to create is some calculated values. I could actually create additional parameters if I needed those right inside the schedule. The calculated value option allows me to take any existing parameters and kind of put those together in a formula to get me the results or the values that I need. So I'm going to create several calculated values here. The first one is going to be simply a value called no area. Just leave it common and a number. The formula that I'm going to use is just, actually this is going to be an area, not a number. Formula I'm going to use is just simply 0 square feet. And you'll see where this will come into place here shortly. Okay, so no area is my first calculated value. Now my second calculated value is going to be a little more complex. This is called assignable area. It is going to be an area type. But for the formula, we're going to use what's called an if statement inside Revit. So I'm going to start this off by typing in if and a left parenthesis. And then I'm going to select whatever fields that I need to be part of this formula. I could either type those in manually, but conveniently, I do have this ellipsis button off to the right side. If I click on that once, it brings me up any fields that are available to be used in this formula. So the first thing I'm going to do is add this assignable. I'm going to separate that by a comma, and then I'm going to put in the next value, which is area, in another comma, and put in the last part of our formula, which is no area, with a right parentheses. So let's take a look at this formula and see what's going on here. So in this if statement, Revit's going to analyze this area or this value based on this assignable toggle. This is the yes no toggle that we created and assigned to rooms. So basically what this says is if this room is assignable, I want to use its area value, which is listed over here, area value. If it's not assignable, use the variable no area, which is simply a 0. So in other words, as we use this in calculations, 0 times the area would be 0, and it's not going to be counted as assignable square footage. So I'll go ahead and click OK to put that in place. Okay, so the next value I would like is the, or an area that would be of interest to me would be the percentage of that assignable space compared to the gross square footage of this floor plan or of this level. So again, I'm going to create an additional calculation or an additional variable here. I'm going to call this assignable area in percentage. A little percent symbol in there just to kind of designate what it is. It's going to be a number value under the discipline common, and the formula is not going to be too difficult. It's just going to be assignable area divided by, and unfortunately, this what I need for a value here is the gross square footage for this level. Now we can generate a gross square footage schedule in here, but at this time, even in version 2014, you're not able to link or use that value from the gross square footage schedule in another schedule. So we actually have to hardwire the gross square footage for this floor in place. So it's 25,147 square feet. And hopefully that square footage, that gross square footage, except for major remodel, is never going to change. So we're safe by just putting that in hard area like it is. So, okay, so that's assignable area and percentage. And then the last thing I would like to track is the net to gross percentage of square footage per room over the overall floor plan. So again, I'll add one more calculated value. Call it net to gross. And again, it's going to be a percentage of the whole. And the formula is simply going to be the total area. Again, that'll be the area for the room divided by the overall square footage. Alrighty, now let's do a little bit of formatting before we go back in, cite our schedule to see what the results are. So I'm going to go over here to the formatting tab. I would like to keep track of the totals of assignable area for this floor. So I'll go to assignable area. I'm just on the formatting tab in schedules, and I'll click on calculate totals. Assignable area and percentage. I would like the totals also of that, and I would also like to do some field formatting. Now the field format tool actually allows you to override your project formatting for any type of variable here. So since I don't have anything assigned for percentage, I'm going to go into field format. If what I need to see for settings is not listed in the default settings, I toggle this off, and now I can change this to percentage. Probably round it off to 2 decimal places, and of course put a percent symbol in there for the unit symbol. And I'll do the same thing for the net to gross. I'll override the field formatting and change that to percentage to 2 decimal places with a unit symbol of percent. Alrighty, let's go back in and see what we've accomplished here. I click OK, and there is my lease schedule finished thus far. First thing I'm going to do is this no area, which is simply a 0 used in other calculations. I don't really need to see this in my schedule. So I'm going to highlight, click on the heading, highlight it, and go ahead and hide that column so it doesn't appear. Otherwise it would appear when I drag this onto one of my sheet views, and that's not really desirable. Alrighty, so we've got some values in here, assignable area and percentage. Notice wherever I've got the assignable toggle switched off, meaning it's non-assignable, it's returning me a 0 value. However, it is still part of the net to gross square footage calculations because it's inside the building. So it does give me a value there. So if I scroll all the way to the bottom, oops, I forgot to total my net to gross. So let me go back into formatting here and click on the calculate totals. So now we're totaling those for the different colleges again. And if I scroll down to the very bottom, what I've got basically for assignable space in this building is almost 53%. So that's not usable space, that's the assignable space. Usable space would be this value over on the right side at 93.92% or 94%. Basically just eliminating all the walls, that's the usable space in the area. Or the net to gross, the net space. And it's not all usable because of that empty atrium doesn't count as usable space. And notice if I toggle one of these non-assignable spaces to become assignable, I'll come up here like this 500 feet. Notice that my value, my percentage of assignable space changes for that college, and of course adjusts my total at the bottom. Again, very, very parametric in its ability. Alrighty, so we've shown this assignable space on a schedule. We could drag this onto a sheet, and it's got a lot of different information in there. However, it would be nice if we could assign some graphics to this also to actually show somebody graphically what's happening, comparing the assignable to non-assignable space. So back in our project browser, I've got a floor plan already created called assignable space. All it is a duplicate of level 3. We're just going to assign a color scheme to it. So in this view, I've got a legend in place, but right now no color scheme is assigned. So if I go to the properties for this view, about halfway down is a color scheme toggle. Right now it's set to none. If I click on that toggle, I've got several categories available. I've got spaces, I've got HVAC zones, and I've got rooms. Well, since our assignable variable has been assigned to rooms, rooms would be what we want to select. And then we can see the available parameters or categories that we can use to create a color scheme in here. Now, if I wanted to show all the different departments on this floor plan, if I select department, and I could change that to say level by department or college or whatever I wanted to. I could select either college or department from the list here. And it's going to show me, it's going to show me all the different colors that I can assign based on college. It automatically does a color scheme for me. So if I come in here and click OK, now everything's assigned. Notice my legend is up to date as far as the different college names and what's depicted on here. Much easier to read than a schedule for those that might not be familiar with it. Well, all I want to see is assignable to non-assignable space. So if I go back to rooms, select assignable space, I'm going to go down here and select from my color scheme assignable. Ignore this message. And now it's just showing me the two colors that I want for either the no or yes value. I can change those in here to whatever colors I want. And when I select OK, then my plan is up to date, showing me assignable to non-assignable space. A very easy to read map. And what's nice is this color scheme. This view is, again, just another view of our overall model. So if anything changes, if I decide to make this assignable space as opposed to non-assignable, if I go back into that, go back into the schedule and change anything, then this map is going to update instantly because, again, it's just another view. So if I go to level 3 rooms and turn that, make that open space assignable, if I go back to my assignable space, notice that it's now updated and it's assignable space. So again, that parametric change engine is extremely valuable. Alrighty, so let's move away for just a little bit from some of the space management tools. Of course, of interest is for us to track is also asset management, particularly installation and life cycle information for different objects in our project. Now, it's very easy to assign parameters to object to track their life cycle data. So let's first off, let's add some parameters to everything in our project. And well, actually, let's make this even simpler. Let's start with assigning life cycle data to flooring in our project. We've got different types of flooring in here with different life cycle information, and we'll want to keep track of that separately. Now, if you floors are kind of unique. We're actually going to assign the flooring information to the room objects. Most objects that you create in a schedule to assign parameters to allow you to track room information. So for example, if I select doors, if I go to a door schedule, there's an option in there to select either to room or from room so you know where that door is going. When you create a floor schedule, so if I just come up here on schedules and quantities and right click my mouse and select new schedules and quantities, if I simply select the floors option in here to create a floor schedule, when I get into here to my fields that are available, most of the time objects have an additional category for available fields of rooms, but floors does not have that option. I'm not sure why, but mostly perhaps because it crosses, if you draw a floor it crosses several rooms and you're not able to narrow in physically which floor that room is or which room that floor is in. So notice we don't have any rooms options here, so I'm going to cancel that. So rather than use an actual floor schedule, I've created again a duplicate of this level 3 room schedule, and renamed it to CNA Flooring Level 3. And all this is, even though it says that it's a floor schedule, it is still just a room schedule. So we're going to create some parameters. I'll go to my Manage tab again, and some flooring parameters we're going to create inside the project. First, I'm going to add a date. Actually, let's add a floor type. Sorry about that cap lock. The type of parameter for this is just going to be simply a text parameter. We just want to be able to type that in. We are going to group it under Other. So we're going to group it along with the other flooring parameters. And we're going to assign this instance value to floors only. I'm sorry, to rooms only. Okay, let's add another one. Let's call this floor date installed. This will be an integer grouped under Other, and again, we'll assign that to rooms. Okay, let's create another one called floor life cycle. This will also be an integer, which will automatically put it under the other category or group. So let's go ahead and assign that to rooms one more time. And finally, let's add one more called floor cost. And this would be a cost per square foot, so you could put that in there, you know, a little more detailed information as far as what that's referencing. This is going to be an integer. It'll group it under Other, and we will assign that to rooms one more time. All right, back in our schedule, we'll verify that we do have those fields now available. So let's add those to our schedule on the other side. I'm going to call this floor type, floor life cycle, date installed. Actually, I'm just going to move that one up above the floor life cycle. And finally, the floor cost is also going to be added, and I'll move that down into place and monitor that last. Okay, so we need to add a couple more calculated values to assist us with that floor data. So I'm going to create a calculated value called floor replacement date, or we'll put floor scheduled replacement. Oh, and if you accidentally do that, like I just did, okay, you can click on that field and click on the edit button, but it will not allow you to change the discipline or type, but it will allow you to update the formula. So what you need to do when I fumble around like that is just simply delete that and recreate it. Unfortunately, there's no way to redo that type or discipline. So, all right, it's going to be an integer again. And the formula, very, very simple. You could type this in if you wanted. It's just the floor date installed plus the life cycle. So not too much brain surgery there, I'm thinking. So that's going to give us the value we want. We'll add one more here, calculated value. We're going to call this floor replacement cost. It's going to be, once again, it'll be an integer. Formula is going to be just simply the area for that room times that floor cost value that we're going to do put together here in just a second. Now, when I click OK, the first thing I'm going to see here, and you're going to run into this occasionally when you're working in schedules and especially those calculated values. What I've got is an area value here and an integer value. And this message comes up and says, well, those are inconsistent units. I can't actually multiply those with each other. So I'll close that. And what I have to do is take this area value and kind of strip its units from it so that it becomes an integer or just a number also that can be multiplied by that floor cost. And you do that by taking that area value and simply dividing it by 1. And that makes it a generic unit, and after that it'll accept it just fine. Alrighty, click OK, and we'll add those to our schedule. But now let's populate those fields with some data. So I'll head back to level 3. And I'm going to select this bank of rooms up here. I'll go ahead and select these rooms also. And then I want to deselect that corridor. So I'll get rid of that and this one here also. So what I'm doing is selecting these rooms, filtering out all the information so that I've only got room objects selected. Once those room objects are selected, I can now go to my properties for those rooms, and there is all that floor information or life cycle information for the floor. So I'm going to assign this bank of rooms carpet. Date installed, we'll call it 2006. Life cycle of 15 years. It's really tough carpet. And a cost of $17 per square foot. So tough yet cheap. That's the way we like it. I'll do the same for a bank of these rooms up here. Filter out that information. Go to the rooms again. And this time I'm going to change the floor type here to, actually we'll call this terrazzo. Same installation date. Life cycle of 35 years and a floor cost of $40 per foot. Let's do one more flooring material just for comparison here. So I'm going to select these corridor room objects. Don't have to filter those out since I'm selecting those individually. The floor type is going to be concrete. Installed in 2006 when the building was built. Floor life cycle, gosh, 100 years, and the floor cost, we'll put $10 in. Okay, so now those have been assigned to those rooms. If we were to go back to that flooring on level 3 schedule, you can see now we've got actual data populated in there. We need to do a little bit of formatting. So for example, on this floor replacement, those look like numbers. There really should be a cost value. So I'll go back into the formatting for this schedule. We're going to take the floor cost. Actually, we'll not worry about the floor cost. We'll go to floor replacement cost. And I should have made that a currency. So for replacement cost, I'm going to calculate the totals, but notice my field format is grayed out because it should be a number instead of an integer. I made that error. So if it had been a number value, then I could come in here and field format that, add the dollar sign and 2 decimal places, etc., and fix that. So I'm not going to delete that and do it. The handout that I can post online later will have that listed correctly. I just missed that one. So again, anything that changes here, area of the room, it's all parametric, and we're good to go to keep track of that information for our CNA, or our life cycle information, I should say, for those flooring. Now the flooring again is kind of the exception to the rule as far as again, you don't have room information you can assign to it, but if you wanted life cycle information added to anything else in your project or everything else in your project, very simply, all you have to do is create 2 parameters and assign those to every category. So let me just create 2. We're not going to add those to schedules for the sake of time, but I'll do a project parameter. We're just going to call this first one date installed. And I'm going to check everything over here and then uncheck floors and rooms because those already have information in those. I'll create one more. Just call it life cycle. It'll be an integer also assigned to everything. I'll check everything on and yet remove the floors and rooms so that we don't have double values there, which we don't need. So back in our project, anything I select now, if I zoom in on one of these restrooms, I select a sink, then you go to the properties. Notice I've got, wow, a misspelled date installed. That's actually French for installed. It's installé. Okay. Date installed life cycle, that's assigned to the sink. If I select a toilet or a stall or anything, then that has been assigned to everything. I can add those values in this project as I want. And we're going to show you a little bit later. You might be thinking, gosh, I don't want to go into every single object in that project and change its life cycle information. Well, we can actually adjust that information externally, which using a little tool called Revit DB Link, which I'll show you right at the end here. So. Alrighty, let's take a look at some of the other options for scheduling information. There's so many things we can do in schedules, especially with the latest version 2014. If you've used 2013 and before, you can see already that the actual layout of the schedules is quite a bit different. We've got headings, we can add images up in here, do all sorts of goodies with that. A handy little tool with schedules is a little utility called embedded schedules. Now, embedded schedules are exactly what they say they are, a schedule inside of a schedule. So, for example, if I wanted to see each one of these individual rooms and I wanted to see only the furniture that was in each room, which was, of course, is very handy, well, I have a furniture schedule created, and it is sorted by level and by family and type of furniture. But notice it's listing each individual item in each room, and it's kind of hard to see exactly what furniture is in each room. So using an embedded schedule, we can actually show the unique furniture per room, and it's quite a bit easier to read. So if I go to my schedule properties, and notice I've got an embedded schedule toggle at the bottom. Embedded schedules are not available for every type of object in Revit, but for most of them it is available. So I'm going to click on this button, and what I'm doing is actually adjusting schedule properties for the schedule embedded in this room schedule. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I toggle embedded schedule on. I've got lots of categories available here. In this case, I'm going to select furniture, but notice you could select anything and embed those into this room schedule. You could list all the light fixtures, the door types, doors, anything that's listed in here, you could actually have that uniquely assigned to, or shown uniquely assigned to the room that it's in. So I'm going to select furniture here. Then I'm going to go down and select embedded schedule properties. And notice I've got very similar options available for an embedded schedule as I do for a regular schedule. I can do sorting and grouping and formatting, all sorts of goodies. And I've got some available fields here. So let's add some fields. For example, let's do a count, family and type, which is going to give me a description for each furniture item. We could add, notice those values that we could add the date installed. We could add life cycle information. And let's also add cost on there. That would be something that would be important to know for each individual room. So I'm just going to add those 5. Let me go over to the formatting here real quick. And I think cost is already set up to show currency to 2 decimal places, but it's not showing a dollar symbol. So I'm going to overwrite with the field formatting and change that to a $sign, just so it kind of clarifies that a bit. Let's go ahead and calculate totals for that cost. And let's click OK to get back out of that. And if we're good with everything else, I click OK one more time. And here's what happens to our schedule. So notice we now have furniture per room. So here's room 390, which is a classroom. You can see we've got all these school desks in here. It gives us a total count and a total cost for each item. Now, again, that's still kind of cumbersome to have each of those itemized. So if we go back into our embedded schedule properties and go to sorting and grouping, we can actually turn that itemize every instance on. And what it's going to give you then is per room. Notice that's a little more truncated. Now it's going to give you a total count, 49 school desks. There's the total cost for room 324. So it's a little cleaner and a little easier to work with. So embedded schedules, very powerful. I think you'll find those very useful in sharing data to users downstream. Alrighty, let's talk about another little utility that you can use with schedules, and that is schedule keys. Schedule keys are almost like embedded schedules. In reality, what they help you do is redundant typing of information for certain objects. For example, let's go back to let's go back to our level 3 rooms here. What I would like to do is actually show an additional value in here of BYU's room use codes. Like most campuses, we have up to a couple hundred codes that we assign to different rooms based on their usage, and we'd like to track that information also. Well, what I've done is I've created a schedule, a key schedule, and this key schedule is called room use, and I've assigned the key name room use code. And all I've done is add in this schedule a list of the codes. I haven't populated all the codes, but all I've done is created this list of codes that I can now use as a key inside a room schedule. Now, when I created this room key schedule, it does give you the option to assign it to a category. I did assign that to rooms. Another use, typical use of schedule keys would be, for example, door hardware listed in a door schedule. So if you had a door schedule for your entire project and you had 3 or 4 different types of hardware, you could actually type those 3 or 4 different types of hardware with all their parameters, materials, costs, etc. And when you go to a door, you could just actually select the room key type, assign it to that door, and it populates all the fields for you automatically so that you don't have to type those in all the time. So if I go back to that level 3 rooms, back in the properties, I'm going to add that room use code, there's that key code, to this room schedule. So if I click on room use code, add it to the other side, and click OK, notice that the field that appears, or the column that appears, is this room use code. Everything is currently set to none. But if I'm familiar enough with the room numbering, all I have to do is click in here, and it has an automatic pull-down menu that comes up, which is that key schedule. So if I wanted to assign this room to be, mechanical, there it's assigned to mechanical. If I come up here to open space, I can scroll down to the appropriate code. Again, very quickly to do. It's unassigned space. Come down to a classroom and do the same thing. If I select one of these, let's see, where's that classroom that had all the 42 desks in it? Okay, so here's one. Scroll down, assign that a category of classroom, and now I don't have to type all that in. It's already available for me. Now I can do that in the actual schedule, or I can go back to the floor plan view, and notice if I select any one of these room objects, one of the available fields is room use right up at the top here, room use code. And all I have to do is if I click in here, I get the same key schedule that pops up that allows me to populate that field without, again, having to type it in. Now this is a very simple key schedule. Again, something like a door hardware schedule where you might have 5 or 6 different fields or categories that you want to add to a door. This makes a lot more sense in having it in a key schedule. All you have to do is assign it door hardware 1. It will automatically populate all those fields for you. Alrighty, let's take a look at another feature as far that you might find useful in schedules, and that's called that's called conditional formatting. Now, conditional formatting allows you to assign parameters to different features in your schedule. And for example, if if you have a room and you're only allowed to have 25 desks in it, you can actually assign a conditional format or conditional formatting to that room to make sure that the room never exceeds, or if it goes below 25, you're actually given a visual stating that that room is outside the parameters it should be. So let's create a very simple conditional formatting. I'm going to go up here to, I've created or duplicated that level 3 rooms to another view and renamed that to level 3 typical offices. Most campuses, I'm sure, have some typical room square footages based on the type of room that it is. You might have 65 square feet for an office, dean suite, you might have 120 square feet, and you're trying to stay within those parameters as you do design in your buildings. Well, this level 3 typical offices I'm going to fix this or set these parameters up so that it shows us if a room is within the parameters that BYU has designated. So back in level 3 floor plan, the first thing I'm going to do is create a project parameter, and I'm just going to call this typical office, and it's going to be it'll be an integer, and that's fine if it's grouped under other, and I want that assigned to rooms. Since we're going to be monitoring square footage of a room, I definitely want that assigned to rooms. And I'll click OK. Again, I could select a room object and verify that indeed is a parameter that it's been assigned to that room object. And there it is, typical office. So again, I'm going to populate that field for just a few offices here. I'll zoom in on these offices and select that office. Let me select that office, maybe these two here. Just enough to give us a little bit of data that we can look at. I'll select these offices here. Alrighty, also I'll filter out everything except the room information again. There we go. And in that typical office, these are, if I want these typical offices to, I'm just going to put 60 square feet in here for a basic office, not too huge, but this is the criteria that I'd like these rooms to either show me they're within a certain percentage or not. So 60 square feet there. Let's go back into our room schedule, typical office room schedule, and I'm going to edit the fields and add that typical room parameter to our schedule. And then we're going to create a couple of calculated values that will help us with our conditional formatting. So what I'd like to do is, very simply, I'm going to create a calculated value that's going to give me the percentage difference between what the room actually is as far as area and what the desired square footage would be, which in this case is 60 feet. So let me call this typical office delta. So just the difference, and we'll give it a percentage. Okay, it's going to be a number, and the formula is going to be simply area divided by typical office. Now, I'm going to get an inconsistent units error once again, because typical office is just an integer, area is an actual square footage value. So let me strip that of its, return that to a generic unit by dividing it by 1. And it'll be a little more palatable for Revit to take care of here. Okay, so now with this typical office delta, let me go in here and do a little formatting. The delta percentage, actually, let's go ahead and take care of that formatting right inside our conditional formatting. So notice typical office delta, I'm going to get a percentage here. If I come back in here, our formatting will take care of itself here shortly. So let's go back into formatting, and I'm going to do some conditional, actually, let's go ahead and fix that, sorry. So in the field formatting, I'm going to change that to percentage to 2 decimal places with a percent symbol. So there, now we actually get a readable percentage of whether we're above or below this desired square footage of 60. But now I'd have to scroll down here and look at every value and get a comparison. The conditional formatting actually allows us to highlight that and actually add a color background to the fields, to the cells that are not matching our conditional formatting. So typical office delta, I've got all these options in here for between, not between, equal to, or greater than. So what I would like to do, we're pretty reasonable within 5% either way that we're matching our square footage that's desired. So I'm going to select the not between, and I'll put in 95% and 105% as our values that we want to stay in between. So notice down here the conditions to use, typical office delta or typical office delta is going to be either between 95% and 105%. If it falls outside those parameters, we're going to get a warning here. So let's change the background color. We'll make it really easy to read. We'll go red here. Click OK one more time, and OK one more time. Now notice in our schedule, everything that falls outside of that conditional, those conditions that we've defined, is now highlighted in red. So anything less than 95%, anything that's within that parameter is not highlighted, and we can see right then either we need to make some room adjustments or some exceptions for that room. So conditional formatting, extremely useful. Now, if you've used this before, prior to Revit 2014, if you were to drag this typical office schedule to a sheet, then the colored cells, or the cells that were highlighted in a color, would not appear on the sheet. In 2014, if I drag this schedule view to a sheet, it does maintain that color field, and so you can actually print it and send it to somebody that would then analyze that and make the decisions that are needed. So, alrighty, so we've got again, we've used schedules to do all sorts of things. We've only barely scratched the surface of some of the powerful tools. Again, I'll have additional tools inside the handout that'll be posted. You're welcome to download that and review that as you need. The last thing I'd like to show you or share with you is the ability to not have to load up that Revit model to maintain some of these data fields. I mean, you're going to have people in your department or in your building that care less about Revit, but they do want to manage some of the data that's inside Revit, life cycle information and other things. So Revit actually has a little utility called Revit DB Link. It is an add-on. You need to go up to your subscription site and add that, install that for Revit. But it's under your add-ins, and it's called Revit DB Link. DB, of course, for database. Now, what this allows you to do is actually export all the parameters in your project to, you can do an ODBC file. You could export it to Excel. In this case, I'm going to use Microsoft Access to export the data to. You see, I've already created a file here that is actually has all the parametric or all the parameters in this entire project exported in the appropriate categories. I created this ahead of time because it takes about 3 or 4 minutes and to export this data, and of course more depending on the size of your project. And normally I'd just show you slides of my family's vacation to Yellowstone while it's generating, but I thought in the interest of time that I'd already created. So you would click on the export button, it would export it to this MDB file. Let me go ahead and close that. And I'm going to take you to, or show you that MDB file real quickly. Alrighty, so it's open. I'm going to scroll down here to door types. And actually I should show you, if I double click on door types, these are the type parameters of our doors in our project. So in other words, it shows the family name, the type name, type mark, cost. These are a type parameter. If I wanted to see instance parameters of individual doors, then I would go double click on doors, and now I see everything. And notice that I've got date installed and life cycle information because those were parameters I assigned to all the doors or all the objects in the project. So somebody could come in here and populate all that information as it's changed, per room, building, whatever. And this file, once you've exported it from Revit using Revit DB Link, is linked back to that original model. Now, if I go back into my Revit project real quick, I've got a door schedule created here with some basic information, family and type, and width and height, and of course, some costs. Well, for an example, the price of this single flush door that I've got numerous options or numerous, I've got a lot in this project is what I'm trying to say. And right now the value is $700 per door. Well, it turns out that door now has increased in price to $700. I don't want to go in and change. I could change it all in here one field at a time, or I could go back into the door family and change it there also in Revit. But just as easily, if I come back into this access file and I'll go to door types, there's that Well, actually, it's already changed to $900. This was $700. This would be listed as $700. The file that I want to change up here is listed as $700, and I'm going to change that to $850. Okay, so once I've changed that door cost to $850, I can close this if I like. But once I go back into Revit and go into my DB link, this time it lists the file that I just modified, and I'm going to just edit and import it in, which is a very fast exercise. So I'll click on edit and import. What? And maybe I will re-export that. For some reason, it's not liking that. So I guess we're going to have to discuss my vacation. Okay, never mind. I'm going to just delete it completely. For some reason, it's not liking. So I'm going to remove that database. I'll export it to a new connection, and I'm just going to call this one Tanner Building. So bear with me for just a minute or two here while this exports the data. Again, there we've got hundreds and hundreds of parameters in this project, so it is going to be, depending on the size of your project, it might take a little longer. Generally only takes 2 or 3 minutes, so it's not too big a deal. There is in the handout that I'll have available for you to download, there's also an option there to create a graphic toggle in your schedule. So in other words, if you wanted to show bullet symbols or a dot for different types of materials in a room, you could actually create a little graphic schedule that you just merely click on those rooms and it would show a dot that, yes, this room is carpet, or you'd have a dot underneath tile or what have you. So that's kind of working outside the box a little bit, but it works very nicely. Okay, so we've re-exported that data. Let me go back up to that location and to go down to that file I just created. So there's that database file again. We scroll down to door types, and we're going to change that value. Again, this is door type number 1. I'm going to change that from $700 to $850, and then I should be good to go. So I'll close that database. Back in my project, okay, so there's the original door schedule. If I click on Revit DB link again, and I'm going to edit and import that file, again, this one goes very quickly. The first thing it does is it brings me up, this is actually a Revit DB link snapshot of that Access database. Notice I've got all the same tables listed over here on the left side as I did right inside Access. So if I go to door types, I have all the same fields available. What this gives me is another opportunity to update a value that I want re-imported back into the project. So if I wanted something else other than 850, I have the opportunity to change it right there. Of course, that does not re-update the file in Access, so it does. This lets you verify. I wouldn't recommend changing it here. I would do it back in the original file, the Access file. So I'll click OK to say, yeah, this looks good. Keep importing it. The next thing that's going to come up, we bring that back into the screen, is actually a report of exactly what happened with that DB link. So anything that's in a blue was updated successfully, and then you've got other colors for different messages. And if I scroll down here, you can see that for that door type number 1, the cost of $850 was updated. And you can already see behind this graphic here that, yes, indeedy, all my door costs have updated to that $850, and I'm good to go. Again, I didn't have to do those individually. That is a type parameter in the project that has been updated. If I go back to my doors and I list a door even and go to its properties, as long as it's the right door, then I can see that, yes, there's that $850 cost has been updated per that link to our Access database file. So it's kind of handy that way. So, well, folks, I think we're just about out of time. I'd be glad to entertain any questions if you want to type those in, or Scott, if you want to pop back in and explain how to do questions, we can take care of that if you'd like. Otherwise, again, we'll have this handout posted online, and it has a lot more data in it that we were a little time prohibitive here, but it would be very useful to you. You can also contact me with any questions also offline if you'd prefer to do that. Scott?
Yeah, if you just want to type into the chat window, we can take questions from there, and Clyne can answer them. Because we don't know who has microphone capability and not, so we're going to do the questions through the chat window. So if you got a question, go ahead. Maybe it did such a good job. Oh, nope, Rich has got a
Oh,
question. He's typing right now. And Jose's got a question. Gotta wait for him to finish typing, though.
if only Rich would use both hands, we'd probably have the question by now. But
Are most of your offices 60 square feet? That seems kind of small.
no, well, in the Tanner building here, this is our business building. These offices on this floor are actually student offices, so those are quite a bit smaller.
We see how you treat your students. Okay.
You
Oh,
know it.
we have a first question.
Okay,
We have
Rich.
our first question.
Rich asked if I have parameters in my BIM standards. Actually, Rich, we haven't. We're still finishing the owner's end of our BIM standard, and then we would have specific parameters in there that we could. Uh, Ultimately, we have discussed whether or not to have the architects and engineers put those parameters in their project, or rather than interrupt their processes, it's just as easy for us. All these schedules that we just created in here, we do have created in our default template. And all you have to do is when you get an outside architect's project, you can copy and paste one schedule to one schedule from one project to another, and it populates all that information for you automatically. So it's almost easier for us to create the parameters after the fact rather than put all that burden on the architect. Now, we are also considering uh, giving the architect our BYU template to start with, which would have our schedules in, then it's all created and they're good to go. So we don't have those listed in the BIM standards yet, but we are adding those to our project template.
Did you see the question from Jose?
Oh, there we go. I got to scroll down. Jose asked, why not use the 0 square feet in the if statement instead of creating a no area column? Good point. You could actually do it either way. So that would save you having to hide that column or having extra baggage. That is correct.
Got another question from Jose.
Okay, Jose mentions here
Uh,
that have there been any improvements in ability to colorize a room with two colors, say two departments in one room? Uh, Not that I'm aware of, Jose. At this point, we still have to prorate the room with room separation lines, and then you can use. We've used room separation lines to uh, take care of a prorated room that two departments are sharing, and in that case, you can assign, uh, you know, via that color scheme, whatever the appropriate department color is. Okay, Tim asks, I may have missed this, but well, he says he wants to know if we're exporting our life cycle cost data to a specific application. Um, Everything we use here at BYU is pretty much homegrown. So our CNA department, which is our cost needs analysis department, has generated their own information, something as simple, or their own utilities, I should say, or applications. And so for us to give them just our simple area values or life cycle values, they can take that right in and use it in their program. We are in the process of looking at other third-party applications because our utilities here are quite archaic. So a lot of these processes I've shown today, if a third-party application would probably do a lot of those a little more automated. So, but with Revit out of the box, this is what we're doing. All right, Scott, looks like that's all the questions.
all right, with that, I would like to thank you, Clyne, for your presentation on leveraging Revit schedules and facilities management. I would also like to tell everybody else that we will be posting the presentation on CFTA website for download, all the presentation material, and we will also be posting the recording of this on our YouTube site. And also, I wanted to say we will be having another in the series, another webinar in the series on Thursday, September 26th. Look for the announcement on our Facebook page and our website as to the content of that presentation. And that concludes our webinar for today. And I would like to thank everyone for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.